Shalom, Yasharala, Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachak Wadash, double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be, and wherever you may be. Shalom, Yasharala, Shalom. All right, so we're continuing on with the Feast of Dedication. We've already gone into chapter 1. All right, which there's heavy history in First Maccabees chapter 1, dealing with these heathens from Alexander the Greek, the third, who, Alexander the Greek, which actually led us to the last session that we did, which was in Daniel chapter 8, and there was more history there, which also brought up speaking about Darius the third and his interaction with Alexander. And then we go on to talk about one of those particular generals that came from Alexander, which was Seleucid. And from the Seleucid Empire came forth Antiochus IV Epimanes. He's the one that really pushed the Hellenization on us. All right, because and from that we get the wicked Israelites that also forsook the Holy Covenant. We also get some more back history on how we were persecuted back then, as well as we spoke about briefly how the books of the law were burnt because we had scrolls back then, so they were ripped up. And just think about you having, a paper tablet or whatever, ripping those pages up and then burning them, and that's what happened to our scrolls, our history back then. Okay, and you had the Babylonians who also did the same thing, which is why we spoke about that, where Esdras came in, where he prayed to the Lord about certain things, and the Lord sent an angel, to pretty much converse with Esdras. And he pretty much did a Moses on Esdras, called him out of the burning bush and so on and so forth, gave him certain visions of the end times, of really all history almost, but mostly, end times, giving the second Esdras 15 to 16. And so the Lord, through the angel, gave the history back to Esdras, just like he gave the history before Moses to Moses, all right, which is how we got the accounts of Genesis and moving forward. Is anything else that we might do? Yeah. So yeah, the heavy persecution that came upon us, they were killing men, women, children. The devil, he came in, did doing this, doing that, taking the goodly treasures from the temple and, defiling the temple with the statue of Jupiter, the pig's blood and so on and so forth. And 2 years later, he sent more men back peaceably, but they turned out to be snakes, and sought out to kill more Israelites. And so now we lead up into chapter 2, where we get the righteous Israelites who actually stuck to the covenant, which begins with our forefather Mattathias. And so, as usual, we got our dagger in front of us. We're going to be on the screen for sake of the listeners who are also following along and learning. But of course, we want also references because at different points I have scriptures written, because that's just what I do. I go through these chapters, especially when I'm dealing with the Apocrypha. I make sure I go through the chapters and write precepts, because it shows you just how greatly the Apocrypha links up with a lot with the Old Testament. Okay. And this chapter is 70 verses long, so more than likely we may have to do 2 parts to chapter 2, simply because in the second half there's a lot of scriptures that we can go into, as I just mentioned, that links up to the Old Testament there. So yeah, there's a lot of scriptures that link up with there. With a speech, I believe it was a speech that Mattathias was given. So this may be 2 parts to chapter 2. And this first part may be shorter than what we think it is. But let's go and jump into the history. Going through once again the history of the Feast of the Dedication from First Maccabees chapter 1, that led up all the way to the end of First Maccabees chapter 4, which is where we get one of our high holy days. All right, known as a Chanukah, or as the world knows as Hanukkah, but Chanukah in the Hebrew, otherwise known as the Feast of Dedication. So here we go. First Maccabees chapter 2, it says, "In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jorib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt there in Modin." So off the bat, in verse 1, we're talking about Mattathias, who was a Levite. How do we know that? Because he says that he dwelt in Modin. He was from Jerusalem. Well, actually, he wasn't from Jerusalem, but a priest of the sons of Jorib, who was from Jerusalem, who was the son of Simeon, who was the son of John. All right, so tracing Mattathias backwards, we find out that he's a Levite. Because we know he's an Israelite, but we find out more directly that he's a Levite, which means he was probably of the priesthood. So it says, and he had 5 sons, Joanan, called Cadus, Simon, called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabees, Eleazar, called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphis. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, calling back to the first chapter, where you had Israelites who forsook the Holy Covenant, they made where they made a covenant with the heathens. They built a place of exercise, basically a gymnasium. So for lack of better words, a gym at Jerusalem of all places, and they probably dabbled into many other heathenistic things. All right, falling behind these Greeks. Okay, so Mattathias, from wherever Modin is on the map, he's coming to see these atrocities done. He's like, as we would feel today, like what the hell is going on here? All right, Ezekiel 9:4 should ring a bell. Those that sigh and cry for the abominations done in the midst thereof. All right, here we have an ancient account of those things. All right, from the perspective of Mattathias, he's seeing the things going on. It's like, wait, what is happening here? But of course, the word was obviously spread of what was going on with the Greeks, these heathens, as well as with the wicked Israelites. Okay, so it says, and when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, woe is me, wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people? So in other words, it's like, man, I know I wasn't born for this, man. To see this happening, this is not what this is not life. Okay, that's his sentiment, that's his feelings. It says, and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. It says, her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. Now, when it says her, we have to understand that it's actually talking about the land here. Because it says, he said, woe is me, wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there. It says, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. So we're talking about, the city Jerusalem, or actually all the, particular territories in general, but been given over into the hands of these heathens. And we pulled this one out last time, but it's a good precept to go into, especially explaining what we're explaining right now. 2 Maccabees chapter 5, verse 19. It says, nevertheless, the Most High did not choose the people for the place's sake, but the place for the people's sake. Now we know that true Jerusalem are the people. Jerusalem are scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth today. But there is a landmass, a city known as Jerusalem. Okay? And as of right now, we're actually talking about Jerusalem, the place, and not the actual people. So it says, nevertheless, the Most High did not choose Jerusalem, the people, for Jerusalem, the place's sake, but Jerusalem, the place, for Jerusalem, the people's sake. All right? So going back, keeping in mind that we're speaking about the city right now. So it says, actually, did I jump back? No, I didn't. Okay, I think I jumped back a chapter. So let me just do this. Maccabees chapter 2. All right, so verse 7 says, he said, woe is me, wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people, which are the actual Israelites, Jerusalem, the people, and of the holy city, the land, the area, and to dwell there. When it, talking about Jerusalem, the land, was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. All right. So we're talking about what's happening to the Israelites, but he's speaking of it from the perspective of Jerusalem. All right. So we have that, basic understanding of Jerusalem, the actual landmass. Okay. The city says, what nation have not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils, which is beautiful because that's a actual somewhat, not directly, but somewhat of a callback to, as a matter of fact, let's see if we can leave this here. I'm pretty sure I got other books there. Yeah, I want to save that John. Okay, so let's go over here and we'll grab Psalms, okay, the 83rd chapter. And Lord, will you be edified by this, all right? Because this is it's a very important topic to me, very important lessons here. And so Lord, will that you be edified by these, you know, these chapters here. So Psalms the 83rd chapter says, keep not thy silence, O power, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult. But the churches will tell you that God loves everybody. But the scriptures say that the Lord has nations that hates him, which means they are his enemies. Okay? And we belong to the Lord, Isaiah 63:19. So by default, these heathen nations that hate the Lord are also by default our enemies because we belong to him, Yahshua Allah. Okay? So it says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Who are the hidden ones? It's you Israelites who today have been given these false names. All right. Deuteronomy 28:37. We so often mention, man, you will be a proverb, a byword, and an astonishment to these nations, man. Okay. And so today we live by blacks, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Indians, Haitians, Jamaicans, so on and so forth. And not knowing that we're the Israelites, but it's the spirit of the Lord and his great mercy that we do know who we are now today. It says they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and have consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. All right. Basically trying to destroy us. It says that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And that remembrance of who we are was stricken from us mainly under Esau Edom. Excuse me, because under his captivity is the only captivity where we actually lost our identity. Under all the other captivities, we still knew who we were. We worshipped our power, even though we didn't have our temple and things like we're reading now in First Maccabees chapter 2, where the Israelites had to secretly worship our power. But at least we knew who we were. But under Esau, Edom, the devil, we lost that identity. And in that loss of identity, they stepped up to steal it from us in their mind. All right. In the world's eyes, pretty much they do have our identity, but they're not the true Israelites. Okay, we know that for a fact. So it says, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They were one mind all together on this. To do what? Cut us off from being a nation, and that our name should be no more. And it says that they are confederate against thee. And even today you have what? United Nations, a whole council or whatever. And you never see Israelites there. They have a placard that says Israel, but those are not the true Israelites. There's every nation there in that room, in that meeting of men and women, but there's no Israelites, no true Israelites there. All right. And then, excuse me, it goes on further to list all those different nations of enemies: tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon, and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Selah, and hope means help. All right, so let's go back to First Maccabees and continue. And says what? Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? And here we're reading about what? Greeks, I believe the Seleucid Empire, uh, they had the territory of like the Syrians, like if you pull that up on a map, that Syrian territory there. But let's keep going. Just mentioning, in general, all right, these different nations and who we're dealing with right now. So it says, all her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman, she has become a bond slave. Yeah, all those ornaments, talking about all those goodly treasures, going back to chapter 1 that we read about, what, Antiochus. As a matter of fact, I'll read it for you since I have my dagger in front of me in First Maccabees chapter 1. Verse 20 says, and after that Antiochus has smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude and entered, verse 21, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crowns, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold, and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. All right, so that is what Mattathias is mentioning here, or the writer is mentioning here, somewhat through the eyes of Mattathias. So he says, all her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she has become a bond slave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste. Okay, and the Gentiles have profaned it. And this is very important, as we spoke about, man. Our temple was always our connection to the Heavenly Father by way of the priest doing the temple services and things of that nature. Now, at one point, we also had Moses, who acted as mediator, but our ultimate mediator is Yahweh Shah. But the point right now that we want to focus on is the temple. Our people understood how important the temple was in the ancient time periods. When there was no temple, there was no connection to our power. When there was a temple, there was a connection. There was sacrifices, days of atonement, sin offerings, peace offerings, different oblations, free will offerings, just, whatever you want to give. All right. And there was always a certain way that you had to do these things. All right. Great example. Aaron's sons. All right. They did this willy-nilly sacrifice, and the Lord was upset with that because he told what to do. All right. And they did something that wasn't in line with the Lord, with what the Lord said when it's, dealing with the altar and sacrifice and things of that nature. And they were put to death. And he told Aaron, through Moses, of course, that he better not cry. All Israel can cry for your two sons, but you better not cry. All right. So yeah, that's very heavy, very deep, man. And the Lord is very strict with his laws. All right. You wonder why we're under the curses now. It shows his strictness. All right. And a lot of atrocities have happened to us, over these years. Okay. So the Lord is very, very strict. All right. He's to be greatly feared. So let's continue. It says, and behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, all right, our glory is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? And I believe we spoke about this, if I'm correct, in the last time that we went to, in Daniel chapter 8. If I'm correct, we actually spoke about these things, man. Okay, so we're not going to go into them too heavy there. So it says, to what end? Let's go and watch the last installment there, Feast of Dedication, Daniel chapter 8. And we talked about these things here that we're reading now more deeply a little bit. So it says, to what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Yeah, it's like, man, if the temple and the altar is gone or profaned or whatever, man, we just through. Okay? What's our purpose now? How can we serve the Lord properly? Verse 14 says, then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. So we had this guy here, this king's officers coming. All right. It says, in the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin to make them sacrifice, which we remember Modin is where Mattathias and his sons were from. Okay, so now they're coming to the city of Mattathias. All right, and so the atrocities have reached this particular city where Mattathias lived. And so that's what we were reading up above. Like, man, he's like, what the hell is going on here? Okay, what is this? So it says, and when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together, because he was like, hold on, we got to go and see this. What's wrong with these Israelites here? Not, of course, not everybody, but he's probably looking around, seeing those that were okay with this. He's like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Okay, come on, sons, let's go. We got to go see what's going on, because somebody's over here tripping. So let's go and see. And that's what he did. He went with the rest of the individuals that were going to these officers. All right, so he wanted to see what's the business here. Verse 17 says, then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and all thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the king's nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. So basically, you had these officers saying, hey, Mattathias, man, you're a great man amongst the Israelites. A lot of people look to you, okay? Hey, why don't you be the first, to come and do after, what we do, all right? Because you remember the king's decree, right? His commandment. So why don't you come and be the first? And Mattathias was like, look, I don't give a damn what those other Israelites did in those other cities and those other heathens that you conquered did, turning away from their gods that they worship, and especially the other Israelites turning away from our power. But me and my sons, all right? And just like our forefather Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I'm correct. That's in like Joshua 24, 25 somewhere. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's basically what Mattathias is saying here. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. To hell with what you're offering here. We don't care about the king's decree. We are going to serve the Lord. All right. It says the Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left, which is beautiful because let's start to jump in here. Let's pull up this. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 5. Verse 31 says, but as for thee, stand thou here by me, and I will speak unto thee all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which thou shalt teach them, that they may do them in the land which I give them to possess it. Ye shall observe to do therefore as Yahweh your power hath commanded you. Ye shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. Okay? Ye shall walk in all the ways which Yahweh your power hath commanded you, that ye may live. See? And that it may be well with you. All right? Being blessed. All right? Whether it be your land, your cattle, or in other things. Okay? It says, and that ye may prolong your days in the land which ye shall possess. Going into talking about the ancient time with the Israelites, where in other words, the Lord is saying that, so I won't scatter you out of this land that I already gave to you, promised to you, which we acquired under Joshua. Okay, but we were exiled. Okay. So going back, we should be able to back up here. Yep. Verse 22. So it says, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. The Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We would not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left. And if you remember, see if I can find it here, what he had said. Bear with me. I'm looking in my dagger. Trying to find where he made his decree. Okay. First Maccabees chapter 1. And I believe this is 41. Where I want to start. Yeah. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites. And this is what Mattathias just mentioned. All these territories he conquered, all these heathens around about forsook their false gods and idols to worship his false gods and idols. And then it says, yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. And that's what we just read about Judah and Jerusalem. Okay. Falling to this man's ways. Okay. His decree. It says, for the king has sent letters by messengers, verse 44, unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice, and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh of unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, which was a covenant going back to Abraham, Genesis 17th chapter, you can read about that, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, which is a plethora of things. Could be the idol worship, what they eat, different activities and things of that nature. Basically things that are against the laws of the Lord. You see? It says to the end, verse 49, that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever, verse 50, will not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he should die. Verse 51 says, in the selfsame manner wrote to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law. And so they committed evils in the land and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. So you see how the righteous Israelites who stuck to the code eventually got persecuted by the wicked Israelites and these heathens, man. Okay. So you basically had samples, right? Sellouts. You ain't no heathen. You a sellout. So going back here into First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 23 says, now when, and that was good to read because we're getting the history on top of the history to make everything fall into place to give you a better understanding of what we're reading here. So Lord, would you be edified? So verse 23 says, now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. So after he said all that, you still had a wicked Israelite who went right up to the officers. Okay, it's like so like man, I gotta say it, man, because we all seen that Bad Boys movie, Bad Boys 2, when they were going through towards the shop. They was walking through the yardies, little backyards to the shop. He says, "I said all that, and all you heard was titties," and that's basically what just happened there. Mattathias said all of that, and only thing he heard was what the heathen said. And so he stepped we got a certain Jew, a certain Israelite who stepped forward. So let's read what happens to him. Verse 24 says, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, because those of us that truly love the Lord and fear the Lord, that's what happens, man. Especially when we hear, wayward doctrines or, oh man, you play around with the name of the Lord. Man, okay, if a brother had laser beams, he'd probably shoot you with it. But yeah, because we take it very seriously, man. And so this is what we're experiencing, the same sentiment, the same feelings that our ancestors felt when they talk about wicked Israelites that forsook the covenant or did this or did that. All right, because we have the same thing today, man. And it does anger us on the inside. All right. We hate this place. Okay. What is it saying that one movie? I think it was the Avengers movie. He said that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry. Well, it's like that, man, because we're sick of this place and we're sick of the things that we see and sick of the things that we have to, experience. But we know that those things are not only necessary, but we deserve them because none of us are innocent. Okay, so we're here to suffer, but also to learn our lesson and earn that way back to righteousness and back, to that position. Okay. Where we're supposed to be, which is on top of these heathen nations, man. And so we're getting experience here, going into the history and experience here with one of our forefathers, man, inflamed with zeal. And so we're not going off when we feel that way, man, because this is exactly how all of our forefathers felt. And we have those same feelings there. So it says, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to shew his anger according to judgment. Okay. So he's basically, it says, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. And I want to give something real quick. Let me do this. I'm going to keep this. I'm going to read that scripture again. We just try to keep this Bible on screen. So it says, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Yeah, it says he shew his anger according to judgment. So let's see if we can start pulling another one up. So we have to do so much switching here. All right, so let's go over here to Leviticus chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. It says, because we mentioned this before, right? It says, and Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them his censer and put fire therein and put incense thereon and offered strange fire before Yahweh, which he commanded them not. And there went out fire from Yahweh and devoured them, and they died before Yahweh. And basically, I'm reading this, it just goes to show you, okay, when someone's going off, all right. I'm not saying like, doctor, because that can be corrected, but I mean like when somebody's just, straight tripping, okay, like what is up with this guy, man? What is he doing? Okay. And it's like, man, what are you doing? And he can't be corrected about it. All right. it flames you with zeal, man, because it's like, man, this dude's tripping. Something's wrong with this guy, okay? And this is what we're experiencing now, from the eyes of Mattathias. We're following his account, okay? And that's why we have this thumbnail, okay? That was an actual, I believe it was a coinage, okay? And that was Mattathias, okay? Clearly, he was not an Edomite or any other heathen, all right? If you just, colored him in, brown, dark brown, or whatever the case may be, all right, he looked just like he was supposed to look like a Levite, okay? So yeah, and because we're following the account right now of Mattathias is why I put that up on the thumbnail. So it says, going back, so it says he says he could not forbear to shew his anger according to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Okay. So it says also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice. All right, going back to the officers that came to Modin. All right, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. So he dropped this Israelite, this rebellious, wicked Israelite, and then he dropped this king's commissioner. Okay, put them both out because that Israelite was wicked. So he put out wicked from amongst Israel, or supposedly, at least in that one individual, he put the wicked out. All right, but we had many, individuals that fell. Okay, but you get the point that I'm making. So he put that evil out, and then he slew the king's officer, his commissioner, because he's the one that came to compel the Israelites to be wicked. You see? So it says also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down, because the altar at this point was already defiled. Remember, we talked about in the last session, I believe it was the last session or the first one, where I think it was in chapter 1 in the first session, where in the temple, okay, he reared up the statue of Jupiter or Zeus, and then he started to pull up also idols around other cities, all right, and and defending those areas too, okay, and so this is basically what we're somewhat speaking of here, okay, where it says he killed that time and the altar he pulled down, all right, so in Modin here was an altar that was also defiled, and so at this point it's useless. And once again, our forefathers understood that connection to our power. See, now in these modern days, okay, the scriptures tell us that we are the temple of the Lord. All right, it begins with men. The tabernacle of the Most High is with men. It's a spiritual temple, not a physical building. It's a spiritual temple. All right, it starts with those men that are teachers. Okay, and so we understand that our connection now to our power is through Yahushua. Okay, no longer the actual temple, because we don't have a temple that we can go to. If we had a temple that we can go to, he would probably wait and catch us all there and just try to round us up or destroy us, lock us in, burn us for fire. You know how these devils do, man. That's what these heathens do or whatever. So we don't have a physical temple we can go to now, but we are the temple. All right. So that's why, like in Isaiah 19, it says that there shall be altars into the midst, in the midst of Egypt to the Lord. Okay, in these days. All right. So every brother who now through Yahushua's sacrifice is now able to operate as the priesthood would, because only the Levites did the temple sacrifices. Now all the brothers are able, regardless of their tribe, to operate as the Levitical priesthood would, set up altars all over the earth, and we offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you. So it says also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. He says, thus dealt he zealously for the law of the Most High, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri and the son of Salom. And Sakli, because I actually didn't look that up. I intended to go and look that up and pull scriptures for that. And I don't think I wrote it down for you, so it's okay. Because I did look into it, but I don't think I wrote it down because I don't see it here. But it's okay. It says, thus dealt he zealously for the law of the Most High, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salom. And, maybe, it's not really important. We'll see what the Spirit allows. But because there's, when you go into that name, there's different scriptures that come up, but not all of them are directly, dealing with what we're talking about here, which is obviously in the Old Testament. So it's okay. I forgot to write it down because I remember looking into it as I was reading the other day. But I guess I never wrote it down. So I guess the Spirit didn't want it. So it's okay. It's not really important. Okay. But it would have taken us back to the Old Testament, as we mentioned before. So verse 27, continuing on, says, and Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that they ever had in the city. It's like, we don't need this stuff, all right? If we can't worship the power like we want to, all right, none of this stuff is important. That's the most important thing, okay? The Most High, okay? And our connection with him. So none of this stuff matters right now, okay? The temple, the altar is defiled, It says, then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. All right. And the trouble coming on every side, man, because they were righteous. All right. How is that? All right. The scripture say when you depart, not saying that they were a part of the world in the first place, but, when you depart from this world, you make it yourself a prey. Okay. So we had Israelites that failed, that broke the covenant and failed to the heathen. So us departing from or them, which we may have been some of those back then by way of reincarnation, but you get my point. Them departing for those wicked Israelites made them a prey. And so, different perils fell upon them. Okay. So verse 31 says, now when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were going down into the secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. Now, it's also good to note that this is not Mattathias' group. Now, this is a different group, okay? Because we get to Mattathias a little bit later. So I don't want you to be confused by that, by thinking, wait a minute, this is just talk about them being killed. So how are they still fighting? So this is a different group from Mattathias' group, but they're all still, one in mind, as in we want to stick to the covenant. We want to fear the Lord and do what's right. All right. And so this is what happens to this particular group. It says they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto them, let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. So here they are, also once again trying to convert these Israelites. But they said what? But they said, we will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. All right. So basically, these are like, well, I guess you have to die. And that's what happened. So howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. And this scripture will call back as we continue reading on into Mattathias and his group. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle to the number of 1,000 people. And it's beautiful because I just thought about something dealing with Esau, man. Okay. Man, what chapter is that? Because it shows you these heathens for who they are, man. Man, what chapter is that in? See if I can remember. Trying to think, is it in Deuteronomy? Let me see. Man, if I could just think about how it's worded, I could pull it up. I'm thinking about the account where Esau slew the women and children, in the rear. Let's see if I could just. It's probably not gonna pop up. I don't think it may not even be worded like I'm thinking. If it pops up, we may be able to find it. I forget exactly where it is right now. I don't want to make a point. What was that battle? Man. Okay, yeah. If I spelled it right. Well, we're not in the blue letter anyway, so we should be able to pull up. Okay. Exodus chapter 17. Let's pull up chapter. And we'll flip past the chapter. All right. If it's in this chapter, we might be able to find it. Where they killed the women and the children and the elderly that were in the rear. Okay, I'm no, I'm not, I'm in the general ballpark, even if it's not in this chapter. I think you brothers know where I'm trying to head with this one. Okay. What is Meribah? Then King Amalek and fought with Israel or fight him. Okay. So if it has to be a little bit before then, or reiterated in another chapter, they may be it. Um, let's try one more. Let's try one more, and we'll move on. Let's say remember what Amalek did unto thee in a way. Let's see here if we can pull this out. Yep, here we go. The water Yahweh Shemosha. All right. So it says, Exodus, what chapter are we in? I'm sorry, Deuteronomy 25 and 17. It says, remember what Amalek did unto thee. And I did say Deuteronomy, I was correct. All right. But it was, like I said, it was also in another chapter. We were in 17. All right. So it says, remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when ye would come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and smote the highmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee when thou wouldst faint and weary, and he feared not the Most High. And this is exactly what we have going on with these heathens right here. They killed, let's read it again. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and their children and their cattle to the number of 8,000 people. Okay, so men, women, children, and cattle. These demons put 1,000 to death. Okay, and so that's why I want to read that about Amalek. Because this is it's the same thing, and this happened on the Sabbath day, and they didn't fight back. Okay, they put men, women, and children, all right, to death. Okay, probably even infant babies, pregnant women, and their cattle on the Sabbath day, and they didn't fight. Okay, you have condemned and killed the just, and he doeth not resist you. You see. So reading on, it says, now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. You see, this is what I mentioned before. This is what was a different group from Mattathias' group, but they all had one mind. And so Mattathias heard the account of what happened here. And check this out. It says, and one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against them. Neither will we die, will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. All right, basically saying, hey, we're going to war, man. Okay, it's win, lose, or draw. Okay, if they come to us, we don't care if it's the Sabbath day. It's win, lose, or draw. We have to fight for what we believe in. All right. Verse 42 says, then came there unto him a company of Assyrians, or Assyrians, however you want to pronounce it, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. All right. So we had zealous men, all right, who came to this group of Mattathias and his men. It says, also all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them. Okay, so you see how all of them are converging here under Mattathias. It says, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor. All right. So, he had Israelites there. Obviously, probably weren't able to fight. They weren't battle ready. All right. Maybe they be elderly or, had some kind of infirmity, or they were young, or maybe they were women and children. Okay. So they had to go into these heathen colonies so they can, go and chill out somewhere. All right. Because you can't be fighting. It says, then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars. Because remember, we just talked about that. All right. First, there was the original altar we read about in chapter 1, where there was reared up a statue of Zeus or Jupiter. And then he started to set up other altars and groves and things of that nature. And so that's what they're doing. They're going around and pulling these altars down because they're all defiled now. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars. And what children soever they found within the coast of Israel, uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. Okay, so those, because remember, also going back to chapter 1, all right, there were the wicked Israelites that went out and forsook the Holy Covenant. And they also started to leave their children uncircumcised when they were supposed to be circumcised on the 8th day. They started to leave those male children uncircumcised. So it says, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. Okay, let's get the word valiantly. I believe I know what it means, but I can't really define it. So let's just pull it up. Bear with it. All right, valiantly. It says with courage or determination. And I like how straight to the point. They fought valiantly to the end. It says with courage or determination. All right, so they were determined. All right, if they saw an uncircumcised child, he was being circumcised. All right. So it says, take us back. Nope, I have to slide back down. All right, so it says, so they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger and wicked men in their wrath, but the rest fled to the heathen for succor. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children they soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they, in other words, they were victorious. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles and out of the hand of kings. Neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Okay. So they were winning their battles, all right? And they were going around, doing what was right, okay, for standing for Yahweh Basham Shai and his ways. Okay. It says, now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be zealous for the law and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Which is beautiful, because it makes me think about of Yahweh. Yeah, he did the same thing. All right, sons, gather to me. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna fall upon you in the latter days. Okay, not saying he was, like a reincarnation of Jacob or nothing like that. I'm just saying it reminds me of that. So that's what he's doing now. He's calling them and saying, hey, this is what's gonna go down, because I'm almost out of here. I'm going back to the spiritual realm. So listen up. Now, therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. Okay, which that name goes into rank. Okay. So it says, was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness. Okay. And we'll probably read a few of these verses, but we're going to pretty much stop here because we're going to get into that all those precepts there in our next session. All right. And so there's quite a few precepts that we can read there. So we'll probably read through this and then close it off, and then we'll go back and pretty much reiterate. So it says, Joseph in the time of his distress kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. Phinehas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood, which we mentioned Phinehas up above. So actually, maybe I do have a scripture dealing with him. We'll see. So it says, Yahushua for fulfilling the word was made a judge in Israel. Caleb for bearing witness before the congregation received the heritage of the land. David for being merciful possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias for being zealous and fervent for the law was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael by believing were saved out of the flame. Daniel for his innocency was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. All right. Matter of fact, we're in here, verse 64. This is a precept I used to bring out when I first came to the truth. Wherefore ye, I wore this precept out. Wherefore ye, my sons, be valiant and shew yourselves men in the behalf of the law, for by it ye shall obtain glory. All right. So we're in this session here, and we come back with session 2 because we're going to get into a lot of precepts there, and we're going to finish off the rest of this chapter. So until then, Lord willing, you will edify. Till next time, Yashua, I'm going to say shalom.